Text. This will be lesson 2 of 4 on how to analyze text. Here we go. Syntax refers to the way words are arranged within sentences. Nothing more. Syntax means sentence structure. All writing has syntax. Why? Because the writer needs to use a comma, use a period, use an exclamation mark, right? This is an unconscious attempt from the writer only to create a structure around intended meaning. That's it. But when we're analyzing syntax for AP Lang, we must assume that the syntax there is a conscious manipulation of the sentence structure. The writer wants to deliberately enhance the meaning or the purpose of the writing in one way or another. How? How does that work? When we're analyzing syntax, we want to look at patterns like repetitions of words or repetitions of phrases, or rather repetitions of structure of sentence, right? Like maybe subject, predicate, repeated over and over again. Unusual structures like the inversion of subject predicate, right? Beginning with an explanation, ending with a claim. Maybe that's more powerful, maybe because it ends on a verb. I don't know, right? But we always want to determine the effect that the writer is accomplishing or attempting to create by manipulating syntax. We never want to analyze syntax in isolation. It rarely works. We want to connect syntax to something else. So we want to connect syntax maybe to figurative language, to tone, to diction, what have you. But syntax must be connected to something else in order to be readily meaningful. And as a rule, syntax is rarely meaningful in and of itself. You have to make it meaningful by relating it to something larger. Okay. Ask yourself the following questions as you're doing this. How are the sentences constructed? Well, simple sentences are usually shorter and they contain the writer's claims, right? And complex sentences are usually lengthy and they concern themselves with explaining the writer's claim. So, simple sentences are often more claim-driven. They make very emphatic points. If there's a lot of those in one passage, is the writer angry? Is he indignant? Right? If there's a lot of complex sentences, which are lengthier and more explicative, then is the writer trying to explain himself? Right? Demonstrate what she thinks is right? Right? It varies the tone. Think about the thoughts. Are they repeated in the same paragraph? Maybe not verbatim, but are they parallel all throughout? In this parallelism, does it create emphasis or does it create a higher sense of importance by repeating the same structure all the way through? Right? Do these sentences add up to a big idea? Ask yourself, are there questions, rhetorical questions? And what are they implicative of? That question mark, is it simply a call and response? Or is it a rhetorical question? And can you tie the syntactical observation to a theme or something else? Try to do that. If you do that, your writing will always be better or your analysis will always be better. All right, what kind of things to look for? Look for simple sentences. Look for compound sentences, complex, compound, complex, declarative, exclamatory, interrogative, and imperative, right? These are all explained here. I'll let you look at the PowerPoint later on the drive. Now I'll give you some examples and I'll explain how they work in the following video. Here is punctuation. Punctuation, I think, might be more important. Semicolon, right? It gives equal weight to two or more independent clauses. So sometimes a semicolon can be used to reinforce an idea by paralleling the ideas. Meaning you get to say the same thing twice, and usually the second time is stronger than the first. The colon directs the attention to something that is important. You may be using a very long sentence and then you say, stop, look at this word, colon, right? That's one way to use the colon. It makes the reader focus on something that might be the gist of what you're trying to say. The dash makes a sudden change in thought, and this is good. Sometimes you're reading along and you feel like, okay, where is this going? And then there's a dash and there's a break in the thought, and that break awakens your mind. It alerts you to something important. A comma is only there to create a brief break between thoughts, but a series of commas may be deliberately meaningful. Maybe the writer's trying to hyperbolize an idea, so they extend the sentence, comma, comma, comma. The period creates definitive breaks between ideas, but well-placed periods can be meaningful because back to back to back, they can create a series of emphatic points. Let me give you some examples of what I mean. So here's an example of a semicolon, right? Here it lets you say the same thing twice. Kindergarten cannot be limited to just play or just academics. See, that's what I'm trying to say, right? The sweet spot is inspiring students to aim for a high level of education targets while still allowing room for children to be children. I repeat myself, and this is good, but I get to say it differently the second time, and I get to make the same point twice, right? And my reader is not bored. He knows these two ideas go together. The period. Look at this. We should be meeting the needs of all students, every single one. Is this grammatically correct? Not really. Is it meaningful though? Yes, and that's the point, right? Using a series of periods or using periods in a creative way can be meaningful. Now, this is what we're doing when we're analyzing syntax. We're looking at, I wonder why they're using that period that way, or I wonder if that means anything, right? Now, if the thing doesn't mean anything, clearly, because you can't connect it to anything else or make meaning out of it, don't squeeze blood from a stone. If it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't mean anything. But if you can connect it to something larger, then maybe it will. So here's an example of something like that, using the dash. So the writer of this article, clearly not anyone familiar with actual child behavior, doesn't understand the importance of play in a child's day. Now, this use of the dash is set off added material, right? So maybe the writer here, you can say, oh, the writer here has a tone, meaning he doesn't think that this way of dealing or determining what the child behavior is, or that's not the right way, right? So it implies tone. And here's another one. The point I'm trying to make is this: children should be allowed to be children. Using a dash just catches the eye, catches the attention of the reader. So that's what we want to analyze. We want to analyze how readily meaningful these attempts are from the part of the writer. So here's how to write about punctuation. When discussing the experience of poverty, the writer elongates one sentence. So I am basing this on the want of money. That's one of the FRQs from the College Board. So when discussing the experience of poverty, the writer elongates one sentence the size of a paragraph, and he does do that in order to exemplify the poor man's destitution and dramatize the never-ending feeling poverty can have on a person's psyche. So there's one really long sentence that is a series of commas and semicolons, and you think, why is it so long? What is it? What is the point of it, right? Well, maybe I can make it meaningful. I'm tying it to a theme. It exemplifies the poor man's destitution because it does talk about what it feels like to not have money, and it dramatizes the never-ending feeling poverty can have on a person's psyche. Oh, I see. You have to connect syntax to something larger. In this case, I connected it to theme. Okay, that's the idea. That's how you write about syntax. In this case, punctuation. Now, your follow-up assignment is to do exactly what I said. So these are the ones that I overlooked at first, right? Now you are going to look for specific examples of each of these in any of the FRQs, and you're going to tell me how it works. You're going to find me an example of a simple sentence or a compound and so on and so forth, and explain what their purpose is and what they're doing. All right, that's it. See you on the drive.